So today on Behind the Mix, I'm breaking down a cover song that I did, Human Nature by Michael Jackson. I thought it turned out pretty well, and I just wanted to go through track by track what I did with this particular song. I think I really kept the essence of the original, but made it my own. So that's what I was kind of going for. Now, as far as live instruments, I just have conga, shaker, and cowbell, and the rest of the instruments are all VST instruments: piano, pad, cellos, and violins. So let's just break down the main instruments. So I have one track of congas. Now I recorded the 3 live tracks with my Manley reference going into the Chandler preamp. So as far as EQ wise, with this bright mic, it doesn't really need much. But yeah, let's just start adding, and you can hear what we have. So on this track we have the congas. Now that is being heavily compressed through a DBX 160 compressor. EQ wise, I brought out the low mid at around 180 because I wanted it to kind of punch a little bit more. So that's dead center. Shaker. It's already very thin sounding, but I wanted it light and mellow in the mix. As far as EQ, I took a few notches, a couple of dBs from like 2K, and brought out like the 12K. So it was just kind of smooth. And then the other track is just a cowbell. And the cowbell has very light compression through a PreSonus compressor, because I think I mentioned before, I don't use a patch bay. I have everything wired the way I like, so if I want a particular sound through a compressor, I just run the audio through it. So let's just hear those 3 tracks together. Now usually with percussion I really pan them hard, left, right. This particular song has like really big vocals, and when the chorus kicks in there's bigger instruments, so I actually kept all the percussion very mono, and I have a little bit of a room reverb from the Lexicon MPX 550, and it's the PCM80 patch. So those are the percussion tracks, and as the song builds, the only other element is a piano. Now for this one, I made the piano stereo. I usually like my pianos mono, but there's not much going on this particular song. So the piano is going through the Golden Age LA3A emulation compressors. Very light compression. And as far as effects on that particular piano, it's got a quarter delay from the Moog Mooger Fooger, and it's got a big hall reverb from the Roland R880. So you can just hear, if you want to hear the piano just on its own. There it is, dead dry. There's that beautiful Roland Hall. And there's the Moog delay. And let's just hear how that's coming together. And that's basically it. It's a very simple track. There's not much going on, but I think it kind of works. And as far as the lead vocal, so once again, the lead vocal was recorded through a Manley reference through a Chandler preamp. For my particular voice, it works perfectly. EQ-wise, it doesn't need much. I actually brought out the highs. I brought out the 12K a little bit. I brought out, I think, like around 6K as well, and I took down a notch at around 350. But normally on this microphone, I mean, it just sounds really good as it is, but obviously you have to really mix things in context with the other instruments, and that's what this vocal needed for this particular track. So here's the voice on its own. Looking out across the night time, the city winks a sleepless eye. So as far as compression, the vocal track is going through the Klark Teknik 1176 compressor first, and then from there it goes to the Klark Teknik LA2A emulation compressor, and that's, you know, those two compressors are really working their magic on this voice. As far as effect, I set up a separate hall on the Roland R880, and I tweaked the reverb so that it brought out more of the highs on the voice, but the main reverb that I'm using for the other instruments, like the big hall, it's a lot darker sounding, so you get a nice contrast. So that's basically the lead vocal. So let's just hear a little bit of the lead vocal with the main tracks. Looking out across the night time, the city winks a sleepless eye. Hear her voice. Now, I mentioned this many times with this microphone, it has like a little bit of tube compression, so I find that I don't have to do a lot of automation on the voice. In fact, hardly any. On this particular track, there's a few points where I really sang it really sharp, so it was like a tiny bit sibilant, so I just brought down those syllables, but that's all I did, because this mic just brings out all the articulations of the voice really nicely. So that's the lead vocal. There's a lot of background vocals going on. Let's just bring those in. So what I typically do is, like, my main background vocal, I will double it naturally, and then on the computer I will double that again, pan them hard left and right with a slight offset delay, so that way it just widens things really nicely. So there's parts of this track where it has 3 harmonies total. So this is like the main harmony. And then there's a few other harmonies, so let's just bring them all in for that little section. Now I wanted those particular background vocals a lot dreamier, so they're going through a bit of the, kind of a lot of the main hall reverb from the Roland R880, and it also has quite a bit of the Korg SDD-3000 delay. I set up an 8th note on that, so you can kind of hear that. Let's just hear the lead vocal going into the background vocal, so you can kind of hear how they play off each other. Hold me tonight, if this town is just an apple, then let me take a bite. And they say why, tell them that it's human nature, why. So I think they work pretty well. And the other instruments that come in on the chorus is a pad, a cello, and a violin. So let's just check out that pad first. The pad is highly compressed through the Drawmer TS2 tube station with the tube engaged. Gives it a nice warm sound. It is actually a bright sounding patch, so I took off most of the high end EQ-wise. And what I did with the effects is I'm running it through the big Roland R880 Hall, but for more texture, I'm running it through the Vermona Spring Reverb. And I have panned that spring reverb hard right, just for more dimension. So let's just play that on its own. So I'm going to take out the hall first. So there's no hall. And that's the patch on its own. So let's just put the Vermona Spring. It just gives it like a really nice lush sound to it. So like I said, I panned it hard right, and let's just put that reverb back. Now the reason why I panned it hard right, because you're going to see in a minute, I wanted to offset the other instruments that I brought in. So the other sound that is on this mix is a cello that is panned hard left. And that has the Roland R880 Hall as well. And then I have panned hard right, I have some violins, a violin section. And that violin works well with the pad that also has the Vermona Spring Reverb panned hard right. So let me just show you the pad and the violin. And let's bring in the cello. So I think there's a nice build up. There's more excitement in the chorus because there's a lot of background vocals coming in. So let's just play it going into the chorus with a full mix now.
Then let me take a bite. They say why? Tell them that it's human nature. Why does he do me that way? If they say why? Tell them that it's human nature.
As you can see, there's a nice transition there, and as you can see, there's not much going on. This is it, but I think it sounds really lush and pretty fat, I guess, for a very small mix. One other thing I should mention, I mentioned in my other tutorials, the percussion is going through two sets of like drum malt buses. So as you can, on this particular track, there's not much going on. There's bongo shaker and the cowbell. I had the left right button engaged, and my buses 1, 2, and 3, 4. And on those buses, one of them is an old Korg compressor. You can check the links in the description. I have a link to all the gear that I've used. And the other stereo bus is a DBX 168A, and I find between those two, I usually have those two engaged in the mix, and it just adds a lot of life to it. Usually, people just use one compressor to squash the drums, but I've got these extra ones, and it just seems to work. So as you can hear, if you want to hear it, the percussion sounds without going through the bus. And there we go, just on their own. And then bus 1 and 2 is added. And bus 3 and 4. So as you can see, by bringing in the highly compressed bus mixes, it really adds a lot of life to the drums. And that's it. It's a very straightforward mix. If you click the link on the description, you can hear the full mastered version. Now this entire mix I don't have too much going on the 2-bus. All I have on my 2-bus is the warm audio 2-bus bus compressor. I have very light compression going in there, and I have the engage the transformers button, and that's it. From there, I export this entire mix. I bring it in on 2 separate tracks, and then to bring the levels up, to make it competitively loud, I just put the Sony Oxford inflator followed by the Sony Oxford limiter, and between those 2 plugins, it gives me pretty competitive levels without really sucking the life out of things. And I'm not a fan of really squashing the life out of things to compete with the loudest things out there, because when you do that, the music really takes a hit in it and you're sacrificing a lot. So because I'm doing my own things, I like to have the music breathe, and I don't really squash it in the mastering, but I am doing my own basic mastering. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, just leave me a comment below and I will do my very best to answer it. And stay tuned for more tutorials, more mixing tutorials. And if you have any other requests for, if there's a particular piece of gear that you probably want to hear on different things, let me know and I might be able to do a review on that. Thanks.